everyone watches women's sports. Everyone
watches
Everyone.
women's sports.
Everyone watches women's sports.
3, 2, 1, yeah!
Everyone watches women's sports. The podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Everyone Watches Women's Sports podcast. I have got, it's been a long time coming for this one. I've got the wonderful Nick Andre finally on the show. I think we've been talking about this for probably a couple years now. And finally, we're able to make it work just with the timing of everything you do and just me getting back to it, the league, so on and so forth. So a little bit about you. You are the host of Love of the Game podcast. You also do some WNBA, NCAA women's basketball coverage for Fansided and cover the Atlanta Dream for NBS Media, along with so much else. Just like pretty much every other person in sports, there's always a side project going on, something new coming up. So tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, you pretty much hit everything. My name is Nick Andre. I'm a basketball writer, analyst, cover everything from high school, college, both men and women, NBA, WNBA, pretty much you name it, man. I'm pretty much a lover of all hoops, man. I respect all hoops, man. So that's really my goal, is to just put on for basketball. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. Started in 2018, and I've just been on this ride ever since, man. I'm on a 6-year run, so hope to keep going a little bit longer after that.
Yeah, congrats to you. You're always putting out new content, so appreciate you for that, just as a fan of the game myself. There is a lot to talk about. We only have a short little bit of time, but let's try and get some good topics in. Obviously, as everybody knows, by the time this airs, we have seen 2 days of WNBA preseason basketball. We currently, as this is being recorded, are witnessing the return of Skylar Diggins-Smith, which is her first game of basketball since, I believe, August 8th of 2022. So what's your take on Skylar specifically and this Storm new look team with NECA joining Jewel up there?
I'm a fan of it. I've been on record saying, to me, it's between Skylar Diggins-Smith and Chelsea Gray as two of the best point guards in the league. So, I know that Skylar had a situation that went on in Phoenix that ended up forcing her to miss all of last season. But for now to be in this new situation in Seattle, teaming back up with Joel Lloyd, that Notre Dame connection. And then, of course, you acquire NECA as well. The Sparks, or excuse me, not Sparks, the Seattle Storm, to me, I think they're one of the best teams in the league, or they're going to be one of the best teams in the league. I think it's between them, obviously the two-time defending champion Aces, the New York Liberty, the Connecticut Sun. I think Seattle's going to be right there in that conversation. We talked about the backcourt. We got, of course, NECA, but they also have a good supporting cast as well. They also started Mercedes Russell as well. They have great young talent like Sammy Whitcomb, Jordan Horson. So they have a really great supporting cast surrounding their big three, and I'm really excited to see how they're going to be able to put all the pieces together this season.
Yeah, that's interesting that you listed them specifically with all the, the teams that we saw at the top of last season, because I was just on another podcast earlier and I said the exact same thing. I was like, they're going to be in that conversation for sure. Like you said, they have the core group, the supporting cast, like they're going to be right there. So, just on that note of supporting cast in general, we have such a deep WNBA draft. Obviously, so many insane rookies coming into the league right now. Obviously, we just mentioned as we speak, we're witnessing Cam and Rakia's debut for the LA Sparks. Obviously, we saw Caitlin yesterday, Angel and Camilla yesterday. So I want to get from you just early Rookie of the Year prediction and then early Rookie of the Year runner-up.
So my Rookie of the Year, you got to go Caitlin Clark. I think she's just going to be spectacular this year. And I think we saw glimpses of that in their first game against Dallas, just showing that ball handling ability to just be able to run the offense And then even there was times where she was able to play off ball as well. And I think she's going to be really able to thrive with that Indiana team. And I think she's going to make that team a lot better when you talk about the combination of her, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Alyssa Smith. They have a really deep team. Honestly, I think the Fever have a really good chance of making the playoffs this year. But who knows? It just all depends on how the season turns out for them. And then I'll probably say runner-up is crazy because this is it's like you mentioned, this is a really good draft class. Might be one of the best that we've seen in a while now. I'm just gonna say Rakia Jackson. Honestly, I think Rakia is gonna have a really great season with LA, and I know that she's gonna be sharing the floor with her draft mate Cameron Brink. But I think Rakia, I think that's really what they needed was like for the Sparks was a wing scorer, and I think Rakia is able to do that significantly. I mean, we saw what she was able to do at Tennessee, throughout this past season as a senior, and I think she's only gonna be able to capitalize it. So it's really tough because, like I said, I mean, this draft is so good, but those will probably be my two right there. I think Kayla Carr will probably run away with the Rookie of the Year, and I think Rakia Jackson will probably be right there as far as, competing for it.
What do you think that Rakia has to do specifically to like beat Caitlin out for that Rookie of the Year spot? Like just like popularity aside, like take the narrative out of it. I mean, say Caitlin does okay. I mean, obviously we saw her come out the gate pretty hot yesterday. But what do you think specifically Rakia would need to do to take that from Caitlin?
Well, I'm really high on the Sparks, and I like I said about Indiana, I think that they have a chance to really make it the playoffs. So if there is a chance that the Sparks do make the playoffs, as I may predict, and Rakia is really the shining star of it, I think that could also play a role. But also, one thing I'll probably say as well is if unfortunately Caitlin goes down with the injury, that may force her to be out for like maybe several weeks to a month, and maybe that may play a role as well. But I mean, those two players, they're just so dynamic, and I think those are the two that are really going to, really shake things up in the league in their first year. I mean, obviously there's other players as well that I believe will be well, but those two are just going to be so good, especially, playing in their roles as top scoring options and of course playmakers as well. Because Rakia is also a really good playmaker as well. I think that's an underrated aspect in her game that a lot of people don't really recognize. So I think both of them just having those tangibles of being scorers and playmakers are going to make them so well this year.
Yeah, I was talking about it with somebody the other day in the Twitter DMs, and I was like, honestly, between Ricky and Caitlin, it may very well come down to their team's season, like their record on the season. It may very well come down to that between like the two of them, how they perform, how they're role players for their team, and the way they produce for their team. Like, I don't know if I think I see Rakia doing it, but we'll just have to see how it plays out with Caitlin because if she if
Possibility.
if she has a season like she came out yesterday and she stays, consistent and then builds upon what she's able to build upon, who I don't know. So,
It's gonna be a tough race. I mean, I know that a lot of people they probably have Caitlin as a clear cut favorite. There's no knock to that, especially with like just the magnificent career that she was able to display at Iowa. And a lot of people are expecting her to carry that over, which I mean she definitely will do. But it's like we said, I mean, this draft is really good, and I mean, there's so many dynamic players, and there's other players that we didn't even talk about either. Like I think, like one of my favorites, honestly, that I don't know really gets talked about enough is obviously J.C. Sheldon out of Dallas. You have Mela Cardoso and Angel Reese out of Chicago. I think that they're going to be really pretty well as a duo in the
agreed.
front court for Chicago. And I mean, there's others as well. So I mean, this draft is really deep, man. And I mean, I know that Caitlin Clark's been the highlight, but we got to pay attention to the other players as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said. I agree with that completely. So, you kind of mentioned it, excuse me, at the beginning. You have been doing this for 6 years, and obviously, just in addition to that, we all have our fanhood years before we ever started doing any type of work to cover anything, anyone. So you have seen a lot firsthand in regards specifically to the growth of the women's game, just hoops in general, the popularity of it all. So, what are your thoughts on the growth specifically, and how can the WNBA as a league capitalize on everything that's going on right now?
I'll be real. I mean, at least with all my years watching the W, like it's crazy because I'll never forget this. So I remember watching a New York Liberty game. This is like 2011, I want to say. So it's about 13 years ago. And I just remember watching the game, and there was barely anybody in the seats. Like, there was probably like a few people in this section, a few people in another section. But just watching how much the league has grown as a whole in 20 2024. Not even just WNBA, just women's basketball in general. We watch how the national championship and even the NCAA tournament, like, the numbers and the ratings have just been like skyrocketing. And I think it's only going to capitalize this year. I mean, we talk about all of the great talent that we have in this league: Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, and then the list just goes on and on. Alyssa Thomas, Ryan Howard, Sabrina Ionescu. The list just goes on and on as far as like the talent that we have.
Yeah, we could sit here and list people for days.
Exactly. And I feel like it's only going to grow more, especially when you look at who's on the come up. Like Juju Watkins is a superstar already.
Right. Sarah Strong coming right behind her.
Exactly. So, the league is only going to continue to grow. But I think as far as them, I think they just have to continue to market well, understand that, that they have spectacular players, that they have superstars in the league that should be marketable. And obviously, I mean, this is where you got to give credit to Caitlin Clark. And Caitlin Clark, just her impact has just been able to help women's basketball to skyrocket. And I think that's really what it is. Just continue to keep marketing the players, just continuing to showcase them at the highest level and just continue to keep going from there. I mean, the league is only in year, what is it, like 27, 28. So to me, it's still in the beginning stages. So, I mean, for them to be able to see this much growth over the last like several years has just been incredible. And I think that as the years go on, it's only going to continue to grow moving forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think like even the little things that they're doing, like the Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi broadcasts and stuff like that, even the little things like that, it matters so much, just putting more eyes on the game, getting the perspective from the players who used to be in that situation, that environment.
Right.
It just helps bring, fans new and old, all of us together, and it brings everybody into the conversation. So you mentioned the gal I was just going to bring up just a moment ago, Asia Wilson. She has been a huge part of that conversation in the growth of women's hoops and is, for lack of a better term, kind of getting snubbed by one of her biggest endorsers. So what are your thoughts on opportunities like a signature shoe and a player like Asia Wilson? What is your perspective on that situation?
I think it's overdue for Asia to get a signature shoe. I mean, you look at the resume: two-time WNBA champion, two-time MVP, two-time Defensive Player of the Year, national champion. I mean, Asia's pretty much won at every level that she's played at. And this is just my opinion. If you ask me, I believe that she's the face of the league, and that's not a knock to anybody else that's playing. I think everybody's spectacular, but I don't think anybody right now is above Asia Wilson right now, especially with how well she's been able to just elevate her game year in and year out. And like I said, I think Asia's just another marketable player. And to me, I think it's kind of like a punch in the face, honestly, when you look at it, because you look at how Kayla Clark, as soon as she gets drafted, she gets all these endorsements, and then she's getting her signature shoe. And I'm not against it. I think Caitlin Clark definitely deserves it. I mean, she's a megastar
Right.
in this league already. But when you look at how much time Asia Wilson has put in, everything that she's done throughout her 6-7 year career, I want to say, I definitely believe that she's deserving of that. So if I'm Asia, I'm definitely having those conversations with Nike, say, hey, what's going on, and if they're not looking to really build off of that, if I were her, I would be looking to go elsewhere, honestly, because I think Asia's just way too valuable to not give her signature shoe.
I feel the same exact way. That's what I said. I think you have to explore the conversation of, is it time to go somewhere else, or are we going to do this now? Because my perspective on it was, it's not like you can't do both if you're Nike. Yeah, sure, give Caitlin her shoe, but give Asia hers too. You should have been done it like 2 years ago. So it's one of those things that, it's way overdue. I totally agree with your point. You basically said what I said a couple weeks ago in almost different words. So, but bringing some positivity to the wonderful Asia Wilson, they have a large possibility to three-peat this year. So what does it take to get that done? Does Candace Parker the absence of Candace Parker make it harder or easier to do? And what does that look like for the Aces?
Kind of hard to really say if Candace Parker's absence makes it harder, because, I mean, they were able to do it last year. I mean, Candace only played about 18, 19 games,
Right.
unfortunately. And then, I mean, and I'll be real, I mean, when Candace was available, the Aces were dangerous. Like they were just unstoppable. So, if you ask me, I definitely think that they can do it again. It seems like, at least from what I've seen, with all the media day, interviews and everything, it seems like, they're all locked in again. They just locked in. I think Chelsea Gray signed an extension. Jackie Young just did the same thing as well. So that's one thing that I will say about the Aces front office and the ownership. They are 100% locked in on really investing in their players and really making sure that they have everything in set, to be able to win more titles. So, I definitely believe that they have a high chance of doing it, but it's not going to be easy. I mean, you got a team over there with the New York Liberty who were the runner-ups, and I'm sure they're going to be 100% more motivated coming into this season, especially after falling short. I mean, they were able to re-sign John Cole, they were able to core Brianna Stewart,
Right.
and what they were able to do in their first year together. Which, I mean, there were some troubles, in the beginning. I think that they were just trying to figure out how to really get John Cole involved in the offense in the beginning, but then once they were able to really figure things out, you just saw how dominant they were. Her, Stewie, Sabrina, Benijah, Laney, Courtney Vanderson. Then they have a really good supporting cast. So,
Right.
and then on top of that, I mean, we mentioned Seattle. Seattle's going to be hungry as well, with their new team. You can't knock out Connecticut with AT and Dewana, and they and they also have a new supporting cast over there as well. Phoenix might be in that conversation as well. I mean, Phoenix,
Right.
acquiring Natasha Cloud, acquiring Kalia Copper. So, the road to a championship for the Aces is not going to be the easiest, but I do believe that they will use their experience to their advantage. I think that they're battle tested. I mean, they've clearly shown that, throughout the year, especially last year, with how they were able to win Game 4 without two of their starters. So, I think that the road would definitely be a lot harder than it was before, but I think that they'll be prepared for it.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love everything you're saying. Again, on the podcast I was on earlier, it's one of those big topics right now, especially going right into the season that, unless somebody comes out as like one of the big front runners of the season and really shows us something that, the Aces can compete against, it might be a lock for them. You know what I mean? It very well could go, but could come on really strong. But like you said, there's a lot of contenders. There's a lot of teams that have put together really strong rosters. So overall, and most importantly, it's going to be a really exciting season. So the one thing I do want to get your opinion on, the part that everybody hates, the part that is the biggest reason why we're putting pressure on the league to expand, and essentially why we say grow the game, is the cuts and the waivers. So what's as a fan specifically, let's take off the media glasses, but as a fan, how do you find a solution for that if you're the league? Like, we see the NBA has had the G League, they've got the one and done rule for the men in college. Like, how do you solve this problem if you're the WNBA for the cuts and the waivers?
Definitely continue to expand, not even just as teams, but just expand, roster slots, for every team, honestly. Because, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, a lot of these young women, they worked hard all their life to be able to get to this position. They worked hard. They were one of the top players of high school, had great college careers. So now they're expected to, take their games, to that next level. And I get it. I understand. It's only 12 teams and there's only like limited roster spots, but I think that's the biggest thing as far as expanding. Obviously, they're kind of getting on the right path. This Golden State team should be coming the next year or two, so that's definitely something that's good. But I think that's another thing is just continue to keep going from there, because there's a lot of talented players that I'm thinking of that are not going to be on a roster spot. I mean, hell, we just saw Bree Bill get cut by the Aces the other day. Even today, with the Atlanta Dream, Taj Cole had gotten waived as well, and she had her actual really good preseason game against the Mystics. So,
Right.
It's unfortunate, and I know that it's not personal, because I mean, like, a lot of these players are talented, but I think that's a thing though, man. Is that I think we definitely have to expand, but I think that's what makes the W so good, is that because there's such limited roster spots, you're getting the best out of everybody, because they understand that, hey, if I have a bad performance, or hey, if I'm not on my A game, I could easily be replaced. So I think that's the beauty of it, is that we are getting the best, and that's why this league has been so good, because you're getting the best out of these players that are on roster spots. But I think that's one thing that we got to see is just the expansion of roster spots on every team, and then of course team expansion as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just one of those things that every time you see it, there's always the one name that you're like, dang, man, I didn't want to see that one happen at all. And, just for, like we all saw what happened with Brittany Griner, and I'm not saying that everybody is gonna get into a situation that's severe, but just the idea of having to have go to go overseas and have that be such a crucial part of not only your income but how you continue to make opportunities for yourself is just, it's not something that should have to be done. If it's something that you choose to do, it should be, available to you, but it shouldn't necessarily be something that players have to do in order to get reps in. So, for example, somebody like Bria Beal, like you said, she's somebody who you'd probably be like, okay, well, it's time for you to probably consider that. You've gotten, I think it was 2 training camp waivers and 1 mid-season waiver she's faced, unfortunately, and that's not because she's not a skillful player, it's because there's not enough room for everybody. And it's
Exactly.
unfortunate, but at the same time, whenever we watch basketball, we get to watch such amazing high level basketball because everybody is so, so good. But back to the overseas point, you know what I mean? It just creates this situation where players are in potentially unsafe, uncomfortable situations far from home. It's impossible to live your life in other ways when you have to go overseas for basketball. So, that's why we see so many women like Maya Moore, for example, who just decide to leave it behind altogether because you have to sacrifice in so many other aspects of your life in order to make basketball happen at such a high level. So, yeah.
That's true. That's
Um,
true, 100%. I mean, when you talk about it, I mean, that's a big sacrifice, having to go overseas. I mean, especially, leaving your family, leaving your loved ones, just to go on a whole other side of the world. That's why, for me, I'm really happy that they do have a league here called Athletes Unlimited. Just be able to give these players opportunities during the off season, and then of course, Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, they're supposed to be starting their league, I believe, this upcoming fall or winter,
right.
something
That's
like
a
that. So
3-on-3 league, isn't it?
yep, it is. So that's going to be really big too. So just giving these players opportunities to be able to play in the off season, and then of course stay home as well and still be able to make the income, I think is really big. So I think more stuff like that is going to really put more eyes on women's basketball, and then just allow people to understand to invest in them more.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. I know both of us want to get back to watching a little bit of basketball before the night ends. So, in closing, I don't want you to name just rookies, but if you could name just for possible new eyes and ears of the game, like 3 to 5 players you think that people should keep their eyes and ears open for, and who you think are worth maybe following along with, copping a jersey for, stuff like that.
Oh man, that's a good one. I'll say I'll say Dana Evans from Chicago. I think that she's going to have a really good year. She's been through a lot. Obviously as a rookie, won a championship. Second year, didn't really get a lot of playing time. Then last year was one of the 6 Player of the Year candidates. So now she should be the starting point guard for this team, and I'm really excited, to see how well she's going to be able to elevate her game, but also elevate the game of her teammates. Um, Man, I'm trying to think of other players. Jeez. Zaya Cook out of the Sparks, I think heading
Yeah.
into her second season, it should be good. I mean, I know that all eyes are going to be on Rakia Jackson, Cameron Brink, Lexi Brown, or whoever, but I think Zaya Cook is going to be a really good focal point, this year for the Sparks. And then I'll go with a last one. I will say I'm trying to go around the league, see who is really underrated. Um, I'll probably say, I mean, it's tough, really, really tough.
It's so many good ones. That's why it's tough.
Um, who is? I'll say Elisa Peely out of Minnesota. I think she's going to have a really good rookie year as well. I mean, that's another rookie that we can talk about. I didn't actually get to watch the first preseason game that they played against Chicago. I'm sure a lot of people didn't, but I heard some good things about her. So I mean, that's definitely a good thing. So I'll probably say Elisa Peely as well.
Good call. That's my Samoan sister right there, man. I am so happy for the way the Samoan girls have been putting on for the culture, man. It's so exciting. So, yeah, thank you for naming her and thank you for like naming those 3, man. That's like I just think it's important for people to, yes, come to the game as a new person because of Caitlin Clark or because of Cameron Brink or whoever, but try to watch somebody else once in a while. Try to find somebody else that other people are buzzing about and watch them too, check in on them as well, because that's how you develop, a robust fanhood, if you will.
Exactly.
Well, thank
Gotta
you so
lock
much.
in.
Thank you for coming on. And just in closing, would you give yourself a little shout out, tell people where they can find you, where they can find your projects and your coverage, if you wouldn't mind?
Yes, first and foremost, thank you, Taylor, for having me on, man. It's always a pleasure talking hoops with you. I mean, I know we did talk about doing this, and I mean, we were even supposed to do this like a few months ago, but
Yeah.
I'm always having a busy schedule and everything. So but I'm definitely glad that we were able to make this work. But as for myself, follow myself at Nick Andre TR on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You'll see all my content. I mean, Taylor mentioned it earlier, covering the Atlanta Dream this upcoming season for Team NBA's media. Shout out to them. I also cover Florida State basketball. I have a podcast as well titled Believe in Florida State Basketball, as well as For the Love of the Games, to be able to tune in for that. And yeah, I mean, just go on my X page and then you'll see pretty much all my content. It's a lot to name, but just check it out from there.
And always, always tweeting out new stuff, tweeting out new episodes for the Love of the Game podcast, which you always have so much good content on. So, again, keep putting that out. Appreciate you just being a voice for the game and a voice for, all the wonderful women that make up the WNBA, the NCAA, and beyond. Like you said, Athletes Unlimited. There's so much more to watch in the world of women's hoops. So, thanks for all you do to bring news to all of us. So, thanks for coming on another episode of Everyone Watches Women's Sports. It's not just statistics, it's a movement. Thanks for listening, y'all.